Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, and members of the press. On behalf of Rupa Publications India and the Indian Express Group, I'd like to extend a very warm welcome to each one of you to the launch of Speaking Truth to Power by Sri P. Chidambaram. I would also like to take this opportunity to welcome the Honorable former President of India, Sri Pranab Mukherjee, the Honorable former Vice President of India, Sri Hamid Ansari, and the Honorable former Prime Minister of India, Dr. Manmohan Singh. It is an honor to have you amongst us this evening. And may I now invite Sri Kapish Mehra, Managing Director, Rupa Publications India, for the publisher's address.
A very good evening to Honorable former President of India, Shri Pranab Mukherjee ji, our author, Shri Chidambaram, former Vice President Ansari ji, former Prime Minister Manmohan Singh ji, honorable panelists, distinguished guests, friends from the media, ladies and gentlemen. We as publishers at these book launches are supposed to be giving you a perspective of the book and also sharing our thoughts about how the book came about, the journey, etc., etc. While coming here today evening, while being caught in the regular Delhi Tuesday traffic, I was wondering how fate plays a role in everything we do. This launch, ladies and gentlemen, was supposed to happen on the 29th. But it so happens that it happened today, the 30th. And the 30th has obviously a relevance for all of us, and is a day that is remembered with moist eyes, but certainly with a free spirit. And there couldn't be a better day to release a book called Speaking Truth to Power than 30th itself. And there couldn't be a better venue to release Speaking Truth to Power than this one itself. And there couldn't be a better person to release this book than Pranab Mukherjee himself, something that epitomizes the journey. We've had the privilege of publishing Shri Pranab Mukherjee's memoirs, the 3 volumes. And this is also the 3rd book of Shri Chidambaram with us. It is one of those few moments where 3 and 3 come together, and it is something that we personally believe is a lucky combination. Speaking Truth to Power is an interesting book. It's not interesting just because of the content that he puts out in his columns, which have now been put together in the form of this book, but I think it is very appropriate from the timing perspective. As we head into a budget, as we head into a year which is full of elections, when there are debates about a variety of subjects, not just the economy, but the very fact of existence and subsistence in this country, and where the whole idea of freedom, of democracy is in question, I think the resolution that we should adopt and as a way forward would probably be Speaking Truth to Power. It just so happens that this title was obviously selected a month or so ago, but it certainly speaks about the state of our nation, where we were, where we are, and where we are going. I once again thank Mr. Chidambaram for giving us this opportunity to publish him. It is rare for us also as publishers to have a panel. We have Shekhar Gupta, we have Shashi Tharoor, and Derek O'Brien couldn't make it, but now we have Dr. Ahluwalia as a panelist. It's rare for a publisher to have such a blessing to have all the panelists either be published authors or yet to be a published author. I'm glad that we have that privilege, and I'm delighted that we have such a wonderful panel. I thank you for making the time, and I thank Mr. Chidambaram for giving us this opportunity. It's certainly a moment of speaking truth to power. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mehra. May I now request Shri Pranab Mukherjee to kindly release the book, please? May I now request Shri P. Chidambaram to kindly say a few words.
Good evening to all of you. Former President Shri Pranab Mukherjee ji, former Vice President Shri Hamid Ansari ji, former Prime Minister Dr. Manmohan Singh ji, many other distinguished guests. I wish I could name every one of them, but it'll take a long time. My friends, colleagues in Parliament, at the bar, and in the world of journalism. Kapish Mehra of Rupa and others of Rupa. Thank you very much for taking time off on a working day, braving Delhi traffic, and filling this hall. It's a great honor, and I'm deeply grateful. I don't intend to make a speech. I intend to read 3 short passages which will tell you why I write. Why do I write? Passage 1. On the economy. The answer has been provided by the CSO of the government that released the advanced estimate of GDP for 2016-17. The estimate is based on data till October 2016, that is before demonetization. The sobering conclusion is that economic growth will slow down from 7.56% in 2015-16 to 7.09% in 2016-17. That is a hit of 0.5%. The conclusion is in line with other estimates, notably that of the RBI, which pegged the decline at 0.5%. There is sufficient evidence that post-demonetization, the economy will slow down further. I'm afraid that my prediction that the GDP will take a hit of at least 1% in 2016-17 will come true. That is a loss of 150,000 crore to the economy. What this means for the common people is fewer jobs, more layoffs or retrenchment, low growth in incomes, and fewer people lifted out of poverty. Achhe din are not around the corner, certainly not in 2017. I wrote this at the very beginning of the year, on the 15th of January, 2017, and this is one column that I wish did not come true. The second reason why I write, and this is a very short passage, it has been medically established that the first 5 years of a child determine by and large the child's health and physical and mental development during the rest of its life. What is the state of India's children? 1 out of 2 children is anemic. 1 out of 3 children is underweight and stunted. And 1 out of 5 children is wasted. The reasons are inadequate food, low nutrition, bad drinking water, and appalling sanitation. There is a proverb in Tamil to the effect, let me say it in Tamil first, Kulandayum Deivamum Kondadum Idathil. Child and God dwell where they are celebrated. It is sad that as a nation, we celebrate our gods, but we neglect our children. The third passage is about our society. There are communal clashes, there is fear, there is polarization, there is intolerance of dissent, there is ideological profiling, there is insult, there is the specter of an Orwellian state. In the ranking of 198 countries on religious intolerance, India stands at 4th from the bottom. In the World Press Freedom Index of 180 countries, India's rank has dropped from 131 to 140. Secularism is derided, liberalism is challenged, dissent is sedition, questioning the government or the army chief or the RBI governor is anti-national. The path to Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas is paved with authoritarianism, uniformity, and implicit obedience to the will of the rulers. These are the reasons why I write. I would urge many more of you to speak. Not all can write, not all have the time to write, not all have the inclination to write. But I think we should speak. If we do not speak truth to power, we will betray the mandate, betray the legacy that was bequeathed to us by our founding fathers. As long as I passionately believe about our economy, about our children, and about our society, I will continue to write. Thank you for honoring me today.
And may I now please request Shri Pranab Mukherjee to please say a few words.
Good evening, Dr. Manmohan Singh, former Prime Minister of India, Sri Hamid Ansari, Honorable Vice President of the Republic, author, politician, colleague in Parliament and government. Over the years, Sri P. Chidambaram, Sri Kapish Mehra, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. When I received the invitation for launching this book and formally I released it, I was a bit surprised in the sense that what I should say in the formal launching of the book, as I have already given my assessment while writing the foreword of the book. Like many of you, I had the privilege of going through some of the pieces when they were published in the columns written by him in Indian Express. I am particularly referring to 3 articles, and I am grateful to the author and my friend Sri P. Chidambaram for sharing his thought and perhaps reflecting the thought and same feeling in 3 articles written in the May 2017 Thinking Moment, Thinking Feelings on 7th May, 14th May and 21st May 2017. Violence, slow rate of growth, joblessness, uncertainties in various economic field. He has analyzed with a professional eye and also provided the alternative solutions. It is because of his long association and particularly being one of the three most important architects of India's liberalization, Dr. Manmohan P. Chidambaram, Montek Singh Ahluwalia, under the stewardship of the then Prime Minister, Sri P. V. Narasimha Rao, in the early 90s. Chidambaram had the privilege of piloting the international trade as Minister in charge of Commerce. And Dr. Saab was the Finance Minister. Mr. Ahluwalia was the Deputy Chairman, Planning Commission. This team brought revolutionary changes in the economic policies of this country and which led the main vista of the economic reforms. And substantially nobody has deviated from that path. No doubt there is differences in emphasis and degrees. It is bound to happen in a multi-party democracy when the responsibility of the government as the choice of people falls from party to party. Every political party has its own philosophy, which gets reflected in their manifesto to the people, which is a commitment to the electorate. And a vigilant nation, conscious political activists, thinker and writer, they keep an eye to what extent the promises are kept, commitments are implemented. In this volume, Speaking Truth to Power, Chidambaram has done the correct thing of speaking the truth, which is the responsibility of the opposition. Literally, he belongs to opposition. As Member of Parliament, he opposes various propositions of the government on the floor. But unfortunately, in our democracy, and here I know, quite a few do not agree with me, as I am one of those who firmly believe that disruption in Parliament is the most betrayal to the commitment to the people of this country, because nobody offers to anyone the membership of the Parliament. Each and every member of the Parliament seeks, rather begs the vote from the people, whether the general electorate or the selected electorate, like members of the legislature. But it never happens that somebody comes without asking the vote. Even the President of the Republic is also to seek the vote. Therefore, after seeking the vote, thereafter, finding out a theoretical proposition that disruption is an effective parliamentary intervention, unfortunately, I am one which does not agree with it. I do feel, particularly the opposition space is shrinked more when the Parliament is disrupted. And in one way or other, instead of opposing the government of the day, it serves some sort of helping hand, provides helping hand to the government of the day. Anyway, that's besides the point. What I feel, what Mr. Chidambaram has done, a great thing, that he has brought our attention. As I mentioned earlier, that he not only thought his own feeling and sentiments, when it was the thinking moment, he reflected the spirit of the people. Many of you have read these articles when it was serialized in the weekly columns of him in Indian Express. Those who have not read, they will find it quite interesting. And the way it has been presented in this book is no doubt most interesting. As I mentioned in the foreword of when I wrote the foreword to this book, that I would like to draw the attention of the readers, particularly to the writings on Gujarat and Jammu and Kashmir. I have no doubt, as his kalam is popular, the book will be equally popular, and there is one commonality apart from we belong to the same party and we shared larger part of our governmental careers under the same Prime Minister, starting from P.V. Narasimha Rao. Of course, he started little before that. When I was not in the cabinet, it was the cabinet of Mr. Rajiv Gandhi. Similarly, when I started with Mrs. Indira Gandhi's government in 70s, he was still then getting himself ready to be one of the most eminent lawyers of the country. He used to practice and already earned quite a name in Madras High Court. And his wife, equally an eminent lawyer, Nolini Chidambaram, was the counsel of Revenue Department in the Madras High Court when I was Minister of State in charge of Revenue and Expenditure in the early 70s. But we have shared the government of Dr. Manmohan Singh, who is present here, long years. We have shared the government of P.V. Narasimha Rao, full 5 years. And we have shared the Congress platform, sharing our views to the Congress delegates in the session and members in the working committee. It's not that always we agree, but that is the beauty of democracy. It has enough space to accommodate all the views, all the opinions, and that's why he has assumed to speak the truth on behalf of the people who do not see eye to eye with the policies of the policymakers of the day. I congratulate him for bringing out this volume. I also express my thanks to young, energetic publisher Kopis Mehra, who is also my publisher, and he has brought out all my 3 books, 3 volumes of my memoirs, and we are getting ready for the 4th volume. Thank you, Kopis. Thank you, Mr. Chidambaram. Thank you, and warm congratulations. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you so much, sir. It's always inspiring to hear you speak, and thank you so much today for your valuable time and sharing your insights. Our esteemed panelists need no introduction, but I'd still like to take a moment. Dr. Shashi Tharoor, best-selling author, politician, and former diplomat. Dr. Tharoor straddles several worlds of experience. Currently a second-term Lok Sabha Member of Parliament. His latest book, Why I Am a Hindu, which released earlier this month, is already topping the charts. Mr. Montek Singh Ahluwalia is an Indian economist and former Deputy Chairman of the Planning Commission of India. Mr. Shekhar Gupta is the founding chairman and editor-in-chief of The Print, India's newest media startup. He also writes a widely acknowledged weekly column, National Interest, and hosts the popular show Walk the Talk. And of course, we have Ms. Nidhi Razdan, who will be moderating today's discussion and is the executive director at NDTV. Thank you. Over to you, Nidhi.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for coming here this evening. I think we still can't hear. Yes. We do this on live TV if we manage to recover somehow. It's a great honor to be here this evening. Congratulations to Mr. Chidambaram. Let me continue. The release of this book, as was mentioned earlier, comes at a very interesting time for our country. We are a little over a year away from the next general election, but if rumors and speculation are to be believed, and in Delhi they often are, we might see a general election in a few months from now. The country is at a crossroads ideologically, as far as the economy is concerned. We have debates on so many different issues, from simultaneous polls to Hindutva, to jobs, to rural distress. And many of those issues have been covered by Mr. Chidambaram, who's written that he's actually written for 156 weeks uninterrupted. You felt that you needed to do that, Mr. Chidambaram, because that was the only way to really confront the government on key issues. So let me begin by asking you, do you think that the opposition's voice in these times when the media or a large section of the media is reluctant to fulfill its role in a democracy, is the opposition's voice being heard loudly enough?
No, I don't think it's being heard loudly enough. The only reason why I was able to write for 156 weeks is because I don't watch television news. I think without watching television news, if people spoke and wrote more, the opposition's voice would be heard louder. I think it's a great shame that the fourth estate, which should be in a position where it is opposing and exposing the government, instead of that, sections of the fourth estate have become, I don't want to use strong words, have become so, shall we say, compliant, so docile. The best examples are from the animal world, but I don't want to do that.
But I'll ask Shekhar to talk about that just a little bit, because Shekhar, as an editor, it's actually sad in a democracy when not enough opposing points of view are reflected in our media. And they're not. Very often you now see what the opposition is saying is on page 13 of a newspaper, or is a little wrap of pictures on television. Is that healthy for a democracy?
I think two things. First, when you said you didn't want to use strong language, I thought you were worrying about using the word prostitute. That's a term of endearment now. It's not strong language, so please go ahead and use it. Everybody does. I think it's not the job of the media to provide a voice to the opposition. It's for the opposition to bring issues of interest to the media. And it's a problem that the Congress party, it's a terminal problem with the Congress party, if I may say so. Because whenever Congress party is in power, it becomes very lazy. A lot of its top people, I'll say this to this audience, are busy cutting deals with the government of the day because they have many other interests. So I've had experience of running newspapers with BJP in power and Congress in power. When Congress is in power, BJP is always on its toes. It's bringing you stuff. It's bringing you scandals. It's bringing you stories. It's bringing you not statements. It's bringing you, after all, 2G, Commonwealth Games. Some of the scandals were exaggerated tens of times over. But BJP did the homework on them. When Congress is in the opposition, even when you go and give the Congress something, by way of breaking a story, because I am out on a long weekend, right? Congress is a very lazy party in the opposition. So for Congress now to blame the media, I will say go take a walk, right? Congress people simply do not do their homework when they are out of power, and I will repeat, they go back to their businesses. Very few Congress people do, and in fact, well, you are in a, this is exception, but if writing a column is homework, I'm sorry, it is not. Because somebody has to come to the media and say that government has made these claims about these jobs. I am giving you, I'm not even saying a scam or something. Opposition has to bring stuff to the media. Don't put the monkey on the media's back. Congress, opposition simply doesn't make news. So, I mean, I don't think, no, I think, I think they're, no.
There are often claims that the government makes which are not even punctured by basic fact-checking by the media anymore. I mean, you have wonderful news sites like India Spend or Auto News or Bloom Fact Check that take a claim that the government makes and puncture it with some basic data and research. Hand on your heart, do you think the media is really doing its job today in questioning the government?
Hand on my heart. Who is the media? NDTV is the media, you question it. Indian Express, The Hindu, these are big papers, they question it. Business Standard questions it. So I think we get, see, when you paint the dot on the wall, it visits your home. Right? You look at 2 commando comic channels every evening, and you think the media is finished. Media is not finished. It's a commando comic channel. There is civilized media. So I think this debate has gone too soon on the media, and maybe I'm sounding like I'm on the wrong side. I should be whining and complaining. I would say that I've never felt, I've run a paper, I've been on myself, I'm trying to set up something new. There are pressures always, but I've never felt that there is such pressure and fear now that I have a story to tell and I cannot tell. I think if any journalist says that I'm not able to tell a story because I have fear, he's either a liar or a coward.
I don't know if many
Journalists out there will necessarily agree with that. So Shashi Tharoor, Shekhar made an interesting point about the Congress being a lazy opposition. Is there some truth to that?
I personally don't think so, because obviously there are many colleagues here who I know are outspoken on a daily basis in and out of Parliament. And certainly we do feel that sometimes the points we make in Parliament don't get the kind of reflection in the media as the most anodyne statements coming out of the government. That may be partly a structural issue. There is a certain reverential attitude to those in power that seems to be inbuilt, whereas the opposition's job is to oppose, and therefore you can discount what they're saying. That sort of attitude is implicit in much of the media's coverage. But where perhaps we should be doing more is not at the level of Mr. Chidambaram's book or my own articles or the speeches of many of those sitting in this hall today, but maybe a little more in the streets. Because perhaps if we were galvanizing the public on issue after issue, the media would have to sit up and take notice. And at the moment, that may be the one thing we should be doing more of.
So what's stopping you?
Well, I mean, we're getting organized, getting up there. Elections, to some degree, do play a role in this. When the party was focused on Gujarat, it was doing a lot in Gujarat. And it was all over the place, tremendous public turnout. Everybody was out there. But at that time, in the rest of the country, perhaps there wasn't quite that much going on. Partly it's about grassroots organization, which is uneven across the country. In my state of Kerala, we have a Congress party that's very active, and not only for elections, but between elections. I'm not sure that's always true of every district office in every part of the country. So there are things we can do better.
Dr. Ahluwalia, your initial thoughts on that? Who's controlling the narrative today? Is it still largely being controlled by the government, or is something changing?
No, I mean, it's difficult for me to say who's controlling the narrative, but I think the general proposition that we need much more considered discussion of policies and different options and different viewpoints. A, that's very important. I don't think it is happening in some newspapers, as Shekhar was saying. And I must share the perception that at least there are very few TV channels that I watch. I watch yours, but I don't watch the others. And I think on television, it's not just a question of bias, it's almost the technique that they now adopt of having the entire screen broken up into a matrix of 7 different boxes, 3 of which have people wanting to intervene. The other 3 have people continuously intervening. I mean, it's not conducive to any kind of thoughtful absorption of events. So I do think we do need a better way of conducting a public debate in which more points of view get across.
That intervening is a polite word.
Yeah, the usual message of some of the anchors is don't talk when I'm interrupting.
Something just shut up, which is far less polite. But since we're in election year, so let me ask a few more political questions. Mr. Chidambaram, I mean, you've talked about the fact that the BJP is a very confrontationist ruling party, and that it's extremely difficult to be able to have a dialogue with the ruling party. That itself does a disservice to democracy. But does it also do a disservice to democracy if the opposition cannot come together and unite on key issues that the country faces? Even today, the opposition is all over the place. Where is that one voice that is trying to seize the narrative and give people an alternative?
So that's not possible in a multi-party democracy. Please understand, barring the Congress party, every other opposition party in this country is a single state party. It's not even a regional party. They are single state parties. 1 or 2 may have had ambitions to become 2 state parties or 3 state parties. They failed. When they are single state parties, their agenda is rather limited. Yes, they send members to parliament, but that doesn't give that member of parliament the freedom and the amplitude to go beyond the limits of his party leadership, which is sitting in that state. It was very difficult for the Congress party to bring all opposition parties onto one platform on every issue. Some issues, many will join. Many issues, some will join. But I think it's ambitious to expect that single state parties, which are almost 7 or 8 parties in this country which rule states, will come onto the Congress platform on every single issue. It's not possible.
CPM will object slightly to your characterization. See, they're a 3-state party, right? Still.
Well, when I said single, you can say singular includes plural there.
How do you hope to come together to fight Narendra Modi in 2019?
We will. We will come together to fight elections in 2019 by some kind of a broad understanding. I think, in my experience, the party that is strongest in each state, see, the Congress and the BJP are directly pitted against each other only in about 7 states. Directly pitted against each other as the only 2 contestants. In all of the states, it's the Congress shares the opposition space with somebody else, like in Maharashtra, or there is a regional party which is stronger than the Congress, like in Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh, Orissa, Bengal, Tripura. There are state parties which are stronger than the Congress. So there will be some kind of a pre-election understanding in many states. There will be a post-election understanding in many states.
Shashi, can you just elaborate on that? How is that going to work? Because at the moment, it really does seem the opposition is all over the place. Akhilesh Yadav says he doesn't want to align with the Congress. The CPM says it doesn't want to have anything to do with the Congress. The NCP appears to have reservations about Rahul Gandhi, and so Congress had to tell the NCP yesterday and Sharad Pawar that no, well, don't forget Sonia Gandhi is still our leader in Parliament. How do you get over all these contradictions? I mean, the general election will happen in 6 months. I mean, according to rumors, it could even happen in 3 months.
Yeah, these rumors are very interesting. And that may be a subject we should pump the journalists on. Tell us what you're hearing. But on this, frankly, a lot of this is yet to take place. There are conversations happening. They're above my pay grade, so I can't speak with a great deal of inside knowledge on what alliances are being struck. But some of these are fairly evident from common sense observations. That in some places, alliances or understandings will indeed be possible, but they may not be the same ones that happened during the previous election. Things have changed, things have evolved. I think in every case there will be fresh discussions. Once the agreements are reached, the main thing is where the BJP is the big party in a particular state, the opposition will see for itself that it's in its interest not to undermine the BJP's vote. Where a regional party is the strongest party in a state, and the BJP and the Congress are on, if you like, a more even keel, then you would have a different sort of approach. In the case of Bengal, for instance, where Trinamool is clearly the 190-pound gorilla on the beach, there are three smaller parties which will have to figure out their understandings. And clearly the BJP is not going to find allies amongst the other two, but the other two may well want to consider, do they ally with each other? Do they go it on their own? Does the Congress, for example, see an affinity to their old colleague who's now Trinamool? So these questions all have to be answered. If you're implying in your question that there are greater contradictions between some opposition parties than would make alliances possible, you're objectively right. But the fact is that nonetheless, there's nothing like, as Dr. Johnson said, hanging in the morning concentrates the mind wonderfully. If you don't come to an understanding and you know the result could be 5 years more in the opposition wilderness, you might well come to an understanding, even if you have differences.
To take on President Modi. And for what it's worth, a couple of recent surveys have shown that while anti-incumbency is within the government and even the Prime Minister's own popularity is declining, he's still overwhelmingly popular. Is this enough to take him on?
Well, it's a year and a half left to the elections. Momentum is very important. You have to see which direction is the momentum in. You've seen over the past 6-8 months that momentum is not in the direction where Mr. Modi might want it to be. So there is an opening available there. But the opposition, just coming together doesn't mean that arithmetically votes will get added. Because when this opposition comes together without a leader, without an agenda, without a clear enough statement of, what's the issue? No, you go ahead. Okay. Please don't interrupt. Let him get his stuff done. He'll keep on doing it. That mic is not working. So BJP will immediately then respond by saying one more khichdi. And khichdi's have a bad track record in our country. Now, UPA was put together in 2004, not because it was planned as UPA, because numbers had a certain logic, and a certain number of people, just a couple of years after Gujarat riots, came together and set up an unlikely government. 2009, I have to say, in Dr. Singh's presence.
That's because when the nation is sick, it is given khichdi.
Well, yes and no. So you can try that a second time. I dare you to use that line in an election campaign. When BJP says, even in a TV debate, you are giving a khichdi, say when the nation is sick, we'll give you a khichdi. You will save your own seat, right? But a lot of your party men will. So 2009 UPA won because Dr. Singh ran a very good government. He ran a very good government. He made major changes and improvements in many areas, which proved many skeptics like us wrong. We thought with the left there, they will not be able to do it. Now, if you go back and you don't have coherence in what you're doing, then I think this kind of opposition unity actually will play to Mr. Modi's strengths. You have to have common agendas earlier. You have to show much better results in the state elections that come up now. You have to convince a large enough number of people that these guys can come back and rule. And also, frankly, this is Lutyens' Delhi. Mr. Modi, I think he came to power saying he'll destroy Lutyens' Delhi. He's done nothing of the sort. He's just replaced an earlier Lutyens with its own Lutyens. So unless you can convince this bureaucracy, NIA, CBI, ED, everybody, that there might be a change and you should not be doing certain things that you are doing, it will be very difficult. And they will only be convinced if they see the possibility of a change.
I'm disagreeing with you, but what is the opposition's narrative? If I was a voter today, I would ask, what is the opposition? Firstly,
what
who is the
Shekhar
opposition
is saying,
and what is it that they're offering me that is different?
What Shekhar is saying, practically everybody said pre-Gujarat. You can't get your act together. You can't challenge Mr. Modi in his den. But what happened in Gujarat? But for a few mistakes that we committed, in Gujarat, the Congress could have formed the government. Our analysis shows in 12 polling booths, just 12 polling booths out of about 50,000 polling booths. If in 2017 we had got the same vote as we got in 2014 Parliament, where we got very low votes, we would have won 5 more seats. If NCP and Congress had joined together, NCP would have got 1 more and we would have got 1 more. So it is a pretty close election, pretty close election. But don't write off the Congress party, don't write off the ability of the people to join hands in defeating BJP candidates in specific constituencies. Wait for the Rajasthan election and wait for the Madhya Pradesh election. At the moment, you will say that we don't have an organization which is powerful enough to take on the RSS. But we didn't have one in Gujarat either. So I think it's coming together. If we can quicken the process, we can make it stronger. But I'm absolutely confident the process will come together and we will pose a formidable challenge to the BJP in 2019 or whenever elections are held.
So I'm making a distinction between states like Gujarat, which is essentially Congress versus BJP, or Rajasthan and Madhya Pradesh, and Karnataka, yes and no, because Gowda is there, and putting a larger opposition unity together, because that can look so chaotic that it worries people.
I do want to, since we're talking about elections, Dr. Ahluwalia, just ask you first. Your thoughts on this entire debate on simultaneous polls. You think it's a good idea or a terrible one?
Well, I'm not an expert on this, and I mean, many people think that there's a kind of neatness to the idea that, you know, you get it all done together. I'm not sure, for example, what would happen if you had a poll and then a particular government fell. Would you have another poll, or would you say, no, the thing isn't working, but you will carry on with a dysfunctional legislature? So, I mean, I share the view that we have far too many elections. I mean, it's quite ridiculous, actually. Partly because every local election becomes a national issue nowadays. So many people that I talk to abroad tell me that, isn't it very odd, because whenever we hear of India, whatever is happening is being conditioned by some local election somewhere. That's the problem. But you know, whether you can solve that, you need to ask constitutional experts. Actually, our principal author is the best person to respond. I was told that it's not easy to do unless you were to override this basic issue, that governments may fall in states, and what you're going to do then?
Mr. Chidambaram, would you like to take that? On simultaneous elections, it's being really, really sold very hard by the
Not
Prime
under the
Minister.
present constitution. The Constitution of India does not give a fixed term to any government. So unless you amend the Constitution, you cannot have simultaneous election. Germany has elections in states at different times. They have a national election, and Germany's provinces have elections at different times. They had one 2 months ago, they had one 4 months ago. So in a parliamentary democracy, especially when we have 30 states, in a parliamentary democracy, under the present constitution, you cannot have simultaneous election. You could artificially construct an appearance of a simultaneous election by preponing some, postponing some. But you can do that maybe with parliament election in 5 or 6 states. How can you do it for 30 states? No state government, central government has a fixed term under this constitution. And what if a government falls tomorrow? Will you put it under president's rule for 4 years? It can't be done. This is another of these election jumlas. No, one nation, one tax was a jumla. Now one nation, one election is a jumla.
Shashi Tharoor, your quick thoughts on that. I mean, the Prime Minister is calling for a debate on this. Is it worth debating? I mean, or is it just a non-starter?
No, there are very, very good objections that both Montek and Mr. Chidambaram have raised. These are practical issues because in a parliamentary system, each government in every state depends on a majority in the assembly. If as a result of a party split or a change of allegiance or whatever, that assembly majority changes, what happens? The glib answer we're getting is that they would have to, you could not bring a government down without having the votes to create an alternative government. But again, that may not always be practically possible. We've seen this in our own country on many occasions when people have, in fact, abandoned a government they had begun supporting. It's happened not that long ago in Bihar. Now, there they were able to constitute an alternative government. But what happens in situations where you can't? If you can't do it, then, as Mr. Chidambaram asks, are we going to have president's rule for the remaining 5 years? It's going to be undemocratic if that were to happen. So various answers have to be given. I think before this Jumla is offered, as it were, one needs to have the proposition fleshed out. But certainly there is no doubt that having elections every 6 months can be distracting. We have a very draconian code of conduct approach where a number of things cannot be announced during the pendency of a state election. For example, a central government policy which would affect everybody in the country will also affect a state that's going to the polls and therefore has to be held in abeyance. These are things that are not terribly efficient. So an argument can be made that having frequent and multiple elections is inefficient, ties down the administration, delays development. Those arguments can be made, but then there have to be credible answers to the obvious objections as to how this would work within our present system.
Many of your essays, I think most of them, Mr. Chidambaram, deal with the economy, and we're just a couple of days away from the budget. So let me first ask you on a subject that has obsessed us, at least at NDTV, is jobs. Now, there's been this entire controversy about the jobs data and the study of the EPFO numbers, which actually seems to suggest that there isn't jobless growth, that's a myth. And you have been tweeting about how it's very much the opposite and that these numbers are also a jumla. Can you just explain that to us, why that is so? Because it seems that there is really no credible data on jobs that is out there. How do we really measure what the unemployment rates actually are?
We can only measure non-farm employment. Farm employment cannot be measured in this country. There's a farmer, he's got a son, and another son comes of age. And he says, come to the farm. But that's not employment. So I don't think we should even attempt to measure farm employment. We can measure non-farm employment. The problem about measuring non-farm employment is a very small percentage of non-farm jobs are what we call payroll jobs. Where there's a payroll, there's a fixity of time when the salary or wages will be paid, payroll jobs. You can't measure micro-industry, small industries, partnerships, proprietorships, association of persons. They don't have payroll jobs. Therefore, you can only extrapolate from what you can measure. You can then extrapolate over the entire economy, and statistics gives you tools to extrapolate. Now take this new theory that we created, or we will create by March, 70 lakh jobs in this country. I mean, it's been exposed. Both Jairam Ramesh and Praveen Chakravarti wrote the first article, and I wrote the second one. Let's look at the numbers. 2014-15, EPFO numbers jumped by 23 lakhs. That was when the economy grew by 7.5%. 2015-16, EPFO numbers jumped by 25 lakhs when the economy grew by 8%. In 2016-17, it's expected to jump by 75 lakhs. How can it jump by 75 lakhs? China's GDP is 5 times India's. 5 times India's. And China creates 150 lakh jobs a year. The argument of the Ghoshas is India's non-farm payroll jobs contributed 75 lakhs in a year, which means in the farm sector and the informal sector, let's assume 1 for 1, there'll be another 75 lakhs. We created 150 lakh jobs. All this is, I mean, the attempt to use payroll as a measure was a good measure. But then to extrapolate and make this outrageous claim that India's economy created 70 lakh jobs. The number of skilled manpower that enters the labor market every year is 66 lakhs. So every skilled person, there's more than one job then. We have licked unemployment.
So what does, when we predict 7.5% GDP growth, as the economic survey did, for the next year?
Under the new methodology.
Sure.
You should
Well,
always add that.
And well, therefore, what does that mean in terms of jobs?
It means nothing. There is a CSDS survey which has come out yesterday or today, a CSDS survey, which is usually authentic, the very good methodology. They have said number one concern of the people of India is jobs today. If you are creating 75 lakh jobs in the payroll sector, why should that be the number one concern? It is the number one concern of the people of India. It is the concern which drove Hardik Patel, Alpesh Thakur, Jigesh Mevani to be able to mobilize their supporters. You may dismiss it as caste mobilization. Yes, caste is a convenient tool to mobilize, but the real driving force behind that mobilization was this cry for jobs. If everybody had jobs, nobody will mobilize and come to the street. You will watch that happening. If jobs are not created, look at the economic survey. It's an utter admission and a confession that after 4 years of government, they have failed to deal with three major issues: employment, education, and agriculture. If a government fails to deal with employment, education, and agriculture, what has it dealt with then?
So, Dr. Ahluwalia, what can the finance minister do? I mean, you're not the finance minister, and you're a panelist who came on 30 minutes before we got on the stage. But he has a rising fiscal deficit. Oil prices are going up. And you have this agrarian crisis, which, as you pointed out, is reflected in the economic survey. And a question of dealing with unemployment. It's a tough budget to present.
Well, this is a very big question, and since I was just brought in, since Derek O'Brien isn't here, it's a bit unfair to expect me, and it's nothing to do with the book. But let me come back one point. I think we should realize that when you say the finance minister, I assume you mean the budget. Frankly, many of these things require a much broader look at how you deploy economic policy and not the budget. I mean, there's no little incentive. There are things you can do, but there's no little tax incentive or some little expenditure or some new yojana that's going to make a huge difference. And in fact, if you go, I'm not making a comment on this particular government, but if you go back over the years, you know, finance budgets have become occasions to lay out a big roadmap. Some of the things they say fall by the wayside, some work. The key issue to me, I mean, I agree with the view which Mr. Chidambaram just expressed, that employment is a key issue. You know, at different times, different things become issues. And at one time, for example, the argument was, how many people are below the poverty line? The general perception is that given those poverty lines, enough people have now gone above that. And people are no longer interested if you tell them, you're not below a poverty line, because they want to know, am I getting a decent job? The other thing is that with rising education, more and more kids have got into school. They're coming out with what they think is a better degree, and they're therefore looking for better jobs. Many of the jobs that the economy will produce in the informal sector, even with high wages, will not satisfy them. Now, how you handle this problem is not easy, and it's not just for India, it's across the world. But to my mind, let's be clear about one thing. If you don't get the growth going, you will not get the jobs. It is quite possible to have a certain kind of growth that also doesn't deliver jobs. But the most important thing to do is to get the growth going. And there, quite frankly, at the moment, we are not anywhere on target. Because, you know, we've heard, even the survey says that India's medium-term prospect is 8 to 10% growth. That would be wonderful if we can get there. But we're not there. So I would hope that in the budget, the big focus will be on how to get growth back to where it is. And in addition, we need to work out how do we sort out the unemployment problem. And I think what you said earlier is absolutely right. A, unemployment is the biggest problem. B, this is an area where the data are really not reliable. And C, I agree with what Mr. Chidambaram said, that the EPFO, these estimates that come out of the EPFO are actually flawed. And people have explained why they are flawed. They're not at all an indication that things are okay.
You know, Shekhar, as you know, we head into a number of state elections and general elections, it's very clear that jobs, rural distress, these are actually going to be key issues for people. The worry is, I think, for a lot of people, that that's not what the election debates will be about. And as we are seeing now with the simmering communal tensions in UP already over the weekend, that the debate is going to shift. Do you see that happening? Do you see the narrative becoming very divisive, becoming very communal and more communal as we head into elections?
See, politics is not run by the International Cricket Council, which lays down rules, 11 players each side, 22-yard pitch, right? 6 balls to an over. In politics, antagonists are entitled to try and take the debate in the direction that suits them. So surely one side will try and take the debate in that direction. The other side has to take the debate in their direction. That's what politics is all about. Politics is not played to any set rules. So to say that, oh, how awful somebody's playing on communal divide, then you can get out of the game and be a journalist, right? And start complaining about it. So politics is about polarization around the world. In fact, if you look at the state of the world right now, from Trump to Abe to Xi Jinping to Modi to Erdogan to Netanyahu, and when you get bored at throwing Duterte, right? All the politics is about polarization and about alpha males running the world, right? They've all come to power riding polarization. So in countries which are still democracies, India is a democracy, Israel is a democracy, some others are, Japan's a democracy, some others are sort of partial democracies. It's for the others now to find a counter idea, counter to this debate. They just can't say that, oh God, these guys polarize on communal lines, ab hum kya kare, right?
Let me ask Shashi Tharoor about that.
So definitely, to answer your question, definitely there'll be an effort because there are issues on the economy, there are issues on jobs, there are issues on agriculture. So the ruling party, which in any case is coming with the weight of incumbency, will try and shift it to their definition of nationalism, which is defined in terms of Hinduism. It's for the rest to not just counter it by saying this is wrong, but to come up with a large, big idea of their own.
How do you counter that, Shashi Tharoor? Because this theme of nationalism is now uber nationalism. It's not even hyper, it's uber nationalism. The Congress tried to stay away from this polarization debate in Gujarat and very consciously stayed on message, at least as far as Gujarat is concerned. But how difficult is that going to be as we go ahead? I mean, at some point, do you think that the party will have to stand up and speak up for the minorities?
Yes, I think we should. But before that, just to answer Shekhar's question about what is our big counter narrative or counter question, there's a very simple question to the entire electorate around the country. Are you better off than you were in 2014? Where have your Achhe Din come? There's practically nobody's going to stand up and say their Achhe Din have come. There are, unfortunately, the people who were promised jobs in 2014 haven't got the jobs. People who used to afford a gas cylinder at 390 rupees are now paying 700 in their homes. They're angry. You've got issue after issue, fundamental basic economic issues that most people around this country need very little reminding of, and it's our job to remind them. They have not been treated well by this government. So there is a strong economic narrative. We can, of course, parse it in more detail, and each of us in our own constituencies will be doing that. But every time I raise these issues, I strike a very responsive chord in my constituency, and I'm sure it's going to be true elsewhere. But then on the larger question of nationalism and religion and so on, I think one can definitely come up with a different narrative. In Gujarat, we were able to neutralize that issue largely. There was some joking about Rahul Gandhi going to temples, but by going to temples, he essentially diffused the issue of who goes to temples. We both go to temples, and let's talk about something else. Let's talk about the economy. Let's talk about jobs. That would certainly be a valid way to address this particular attempt at polarization that everyone sees as likely to come.
But it sounds a bit like you're all waiting for Narendra Modi to make mistakes rather than give a constructive narrative to the people of India, to be honest.
No, the constructive narrative is we have actually demonstrated over a period of 10 years that your fate, my dear Indian voter, is better in our hands. We have been able to deliver sustained growth. We have pulled 10 million people a year out from below the poverty line. We have been able to bring you things like the right to information, which is now being hollowed out in practice by this government. We have been able to bring a lot of concrete material changes in your lives. Talk to rural voters about the Mahatma Gandhi Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme. It's touched and transformed many, many millions of lives. And for those people, the UPA has a proven track record. Ask them, what is the NDA's track record in these 4 years and 5 years? What have they done that has improved your life? Very few people will have anything to point to. You know, slogans are all very well. You can say, make up India, stand up India, sit down India. Now we're getting ready for slow down India also. At the end of the day, the slogans have to be translated into concrete improvements in the lives of individuals. Unless one can point to those improvements, instead of people who've lost their jobs with demonetization, micro enterprises and small enterprises that had to shut down because of that, now other small and medium enterprises suffering from the botched implementation of the GST with the 6 rates of tax and the 37 forms they have to fill each year and so on. There aren't a whole lot of happy people out there who are celebrating our Chedin.
Well, let me open this up to the audience for 5 minutes of questions before we wrap up. If you'd like to ask a question, you could please raise your hand. And I see Dushyant Dave has already raised his hand. Is there a mic that we could hand over?
Well, I must begin with a little example of what really felt from the panelists. Almost, about 25 years ago, I was on a flight and sitting next to Mr. L.K. Advani, just after the success of his great Rath Yatra. And I asked him, I said, look, you have been able to galvanize the country on this issue, which to my mind is wholly irrelevant for modern India. But don't you think that there are many other issues like unemployment, health, law and order, women's rights, children's rights, etc., literacy, on which you should really have many yatras and you can galvanize the country? And his answer was that no, it's only on the emotive issues that you can galvanize the country. Now that troubled me, and it's troubled me for the last about 2.5 decades. And I want to ask you a question, Mr. Shashi Tharoor, that look, we are a religious country, deeply religious. And religious frenzy really, drowns truth. Whatever may be your narrative, whatever may be your issue, unemployment, this, that, everything, it all gets really drowned by religious fervor. How is it that you are going to really tackle this kind of a problem, to really send a message to the people that we really need to build the country, not just in the next election, but build the country for all times to come so that we can give future generations a real India?
I don't have a glib answer to that question. The truth is that each of us is out there trying to speak to our voters and convince our voters that the way forward in our own states, the nature of the message may vary. In some ways, in Kerala, I have an easier time diffusing a communal appeal because a communal appeal has much less traction in Kerala than it might do in some states in North India. So my colleagues in North India will have a perhaps slightly different challenge in how to resist it. But we will have to resist it because ultimately, it seems to me the key message to the voter is, why are you electing a government? To give you a better life. Okay, mandir to banayega, nahi banayega, it's a different matter. Are you having a better life now? Do you think the people you voted to power last time have given you a better life? To my mind, this is a very simple, direct message that we can address to every voter in our own way and with all the adjustments required in each place in the country.
One moment, Shehzad is here in the audience, he wants a question. Just wait for the mic.
I'm looking forward to reading the book, but I already read the articles. My name is Shehzad. I've been a party colleague. Sir, 2 questions. The first question is that when you said about...
One question, please, one question.
All right. So 1 question and 1 observation. The simultaneous elections, you said the constitution needs to be changed, but initially the first 3 general elections were held with state elections together. But that aside, so speaking through to power, and obviously here we're speaking about the ruling establishment, the BJP, Mr. Modi, and that's what we want to speak to. So within the party, Is Mr. Gandhi the most competent to speak to that path, or can a Shashi Tharoor, who I think is also quite capable and has good poetry skills, can also take that leadership role, or maybe? Because that is also speaking through to power within our party.
In English. His oratory in English.
His oratory in English, but I'm sure if you would have put in some more time, you could have groomed good leaders who could have spoken through to power in Hindi and in English.
A party leader is chosen respecting the will of the rank and file. Now, I don't know how many of you know what the rank and file of a party is. I know what the rank and file of a party is. Without doubt in my mind, and without being judgmental at all, you're trying to be judgmental, I'm not. Without doubt in my mind, I'm absolutely clear, in any part of India, if you go to 10 Congress workers, 9 out of 10 will say, Mr. Rahul Gandhi should be our president. It's not for you or me to say that's right or wrong. You're judging them. You can't judge them. Suspend your judgment. 9 out of 10 will say, Mr. Rahul Gandhi should be the president of this party. Now, I want him to succeed, as I'm sure Shashi wants him to succeed. He will succeed. He almost succeeded in Gujarat. Almost. Just one step. I think that horse won by what they call half a head or something. We could have. I'm telling you now, wait. Wait for Madhya Pradesh, wait for Rajasthan. We will succeed. And then you may change your view.
Professor Mukherjee has a question. The mic there. Sir, with the mic, please.
This assumption that it's the economy that the people will respond to at the moment, and we should focus on that and not on issues of nationalism and communalism, because the assumption is if you do that, then the BJP wins. Now I would like to ask the panelists, and especially the Congress people here, that can we not look at our first general election, where the issue raised was not the economy, the issue raised was what kind of nationalism? Are we going to create a Pakistan like India, or are we going to create a secular India? And the Indian people voted overwhelmingly. 96% of the Indian people said that we want, and they responded emotively to a secular India. Now, why is that not possible anymore?
I think in all fairness, many of us are trying to advocate precisely this. But still, the point about what kind of India do we want? I mean, certainly, again, in my constituent, this is a major element of my themes. My current book is precisely that we should not cede to the BJP the right to define who is a Hindu and what a Hindu is and how a Hindu should behave. That there are many Hindus who have a very different view of Hinduism from the BJP's, and indeed theirs is perhaps a minority view that distorts the essential tenets of the faith as well as the way in which it's lived and practiced in India. So this argument is being made and can be made. But ultimately, for the reason that that Dushyant Dave mentioned, the emotional content of appeals to a community in danger and so on, which have worked time and again for the BJP in various places. To that, countering that we believe in an all-inclusive Hinduism may not be the most effective response. It might work with some, but telling them, you may feel great pride in your religion or your caste or whatever else, but at the end of the day, what about a better life for yourself and your children? Have you got that? That appeal, I think, still has some solid potential.
I'm afraid we're out of time, so you can take these questions offline because we have to wrap. I'd like to thank you all for coming in this evening, for very patiently. Well, I am out of time, and if you'd let me, I have to stick to time because I'm already over time. So I let you ask it offline. I'll let you ask it offline. Thank you very much. I wish we had time to talk about so many other subjects in the book, including Jammu and Kashmir, which I think is a particularly important subject in the times that we live in. But thank you to all of you and for your questions tonight. Thank you very much.